We've got another music biopic, and this one centers on the man behind one of the most recognizable voices in American music history. And the man portraying him on film, Jeremy Allen White, handpicked by the boss himself. Let's talk Springsteen, Deliver Me from Nowhere. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my movie review for Springsteen, Deliver Me from Nowhere. This is playing in theaters now, and it takes inspiration from two books about the boss. One is Deliver Me from Nowhere by Warren Zanes, who is a music biographer, but also has a specific connection with Bruce and the East Street Band because he heads up this foundation created by Steven Van Zandt. And the other part of this movie takes inspiration from Bruce's own autobiography, Born to Run. So this was directed by and screenplay written by Scott Cooper. He sort of took those couple of books for inspiration because this takes place in a very specific year or two in Bruce's life, a specific time period in his career, but also a way to sort of get his mental health in check and all that sort of stuff. So that is tackled here in this movie, and we'll tackle it in just a second review-wise on the channel. But first, let me welcome you back to Dan Reviews It. If you're a subscriber already, thank you so much for that. I love it when you guys return to check out my stuff. But if you're not, please consider subscribing and click that notification bell. And of course, liking this video and commenting below. That helps the channel out as well. But do comment because this movie is getting some mixed results, and I'm curious to see where you guys land on this. As for me, I would say, a casual Springsteen fan. I don't dive into all the back catalog and the album cuts. I do own several of his albums, but look, I'm more of a singles guy, a hits guy anyway. And Bruce was never one of those artists I really dove deep into, but I have seen him twice in concert with the E Street Band, so certainly enjoyable times there. And I even went dressed as the boss one year for Halloween. Born in the USA came out in 1984. I was probably 7 that year for Trick or Treat, and probably the next year is when I went as him. But easy costume. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so t-shirt, jeans, the ball cap in the back pocket, a bandana, and we made a guitar out of cardboard, and voila. But I wasn't even really into popular music that much at the time, but it was impossible to escape how popular Bruce Springsteen was at that time. So this movie covers a little bit before that. So we are coming off of the River tour in 1981. The River was a big album for him, starting to really blow his stardom up. Of course, you had Born to Run in the 70s, a minor hit kind of that became a huge hit in retrospect. But the River, it gave him his first top 10 single with Hungry Heart. So he's coming off a big tour for that album. And that's where we start with Deliver Me from Nowhere. And then we sort of are in the process of recording this next album. The studio, the label wants an album with a bunch of hits, more top 10 singles coming, but Bruce is not in that place mentally. He holes up in this house in Freehold, New Jersey, and ends up writing what would become this album, Nebraska, an off the beaten path record. And his edict was no singles, no promotion for the album with press, no tour, and don't even put my picture on the cover. And so this movie is about recording that album, and the people in charge of his career and the record label sort of nervously hoping that he will change his mind and no, let's go back to that Born in the USA song we recorded, or whatever. So Jeremy Allen White is portraying Bruce here, and he was handpicked, like I mentioned in the intro, by the boss. I don't know if Springsteen is a big fan of the Bear or whatever, but he specifically chose Jeremy Allen White, and the guy definitely looks enough the part. So let's sort of start there because his performance is easily the best thing about this movie. But I guess I'll name a few other people. So you have Jeremy Strong as John Landau, longtime manager and producer for Springsteen. Paul Walter Hauser as Springsteen's recording engineer during the Nebraska sessions. He comes over to the house and helps him record it. You have Stephen Graham as Bruce's father, Gabby Hoffman as Bruce's mother, which we see in flashbacks, which I'll talk about, and then Odessa Young as Faye, who is Bruce's love interest in this time period. Now, she is not real, as they do often with music biopics. She is an amalgamation of a few different women that Bruce was kind of seeing at the time. And then you also have some minor roles from Mark Maron, David Krumholtz, Grace Gummer, and even as a voiceover, doing his own voice, Jimmy Iovine, the head of Interscope Records now, I guess, or was recently. At this point in time, we're at Columbia Records, so I guess that's where he was at the time. But he's doing his own voice here in a voiceover, which is kind of fun for us, sort of record label and music nerds. But look, Jeremy Allen White is the star of this show. This movie does not work without his killer performance, and I'm not sure that it works even with, but far and away, the outstanding performance here is the reason to see this movie. I would not be super shocked if we see an Oscar nomination for Jeremy Allen White. The Academy loves their music biopic people. Obviously Rami Malek won recently. A little bit before that, Jamie Foxx won as performing Ray Charles. But White really, not only does he, look enough the part, but then, with makeup and great hairstyling, he really, really captures the essence of Bruce at that time. But more than that, he really did his due diligence, and he is singing all the songs here. He learned how to play guitar for this movie, and that, for me, in a music biopic, really does make a difference. I mean, Jamie Foxx, I already mentioned, he's fantastic as Ray, but we've had, varying results in recent years. Taron Egerton, I thought, was great as Elton John in Rocket Man. Maybe a snub from the Academy there, but Rami Malek didn't do any of his own singing in Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a good enough performance, but this is a really, what a performance. So without that commitment, this movie doesn't work. I'll just say that, because a lot of things don't work about this movie. So let's talk about that now that we've sang the praises of Jeremy Allen White. The reason that this movie doesn't work is, for one thing, it's kind of all over the place. But let's start with just the time period as itself. Recently Timothée Chalamet did the great Bob Dylan movie, A Complete Unknown, which, like this, took a very specific part of Dylan's career and turned it out for the movie so we could focus in. So it's not like a lifelong story. I think that was smart to do here as well. But my question is, were the stakes as high for this as in the Bob Dylan movie where he decides to go electric? I didn't think they were. I mean, sure, he's coming off a hot album. They want him to do nothing but hits. He wants to do this album that isn't that. He's in a different kind of place in his life, mentally, and not feeling the hits. Okay, but the album was still a big success, as we learned at the end of the movie. Like, I knew it was a great album, like, in retrospect. Like, people now view it as, oh, this is one of Springsteen's best for sure. But even at the time, it made number 3 on the charts, on the album charts. So, yes, maybe this was daring, but I feel like almost every artist, when they get some clout, says to their label, like, hey, I'm going to do this sort of off the beaten path album. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but this is where I am right now. That happens a lot. And so just focusing on that maybe wasn't the best choice. Maybe widen it out a little bit, like do the Born in the USA years, or even 15 minutes in the intro, like leading up. Because the problem is, when he's holed up in this house writing these songs, yes, there's some flashbacks to keep us interested, but it's not that engaging on the screen, just watching a guy write things in his notebook and then, kind of recording them on this 4-track and going back and changing lyrics. It's like, okay, I get that the songwriting process is very specific, for Springsteen, certainly for this album. But as a viewer, it was kind of boring, to be honest. And that's something that is rarely attached to Springsteen's name. Boring. I mean, he's the reason we have 2 and 3 hour concerts these days. Before Springsteen came around, for the most part, people were doing these, 40-minute shows and then leaving. Paul McCartney's lamented about that, but Springsteen was like, no, we're going to give the fans what they want and all that. Then there's the flashback portion. So that is in black and white. He's maybe, I don't know, 9 or 10 in these flashbacks. and they're okay, but they don't provide enough of a context. Some of them I didn't quite even understand how they fit into the storyline, and then we're up to sort of the present day, in the mid '80s, and this isn't really a spoiler. I'm not going to go into that kind of territory, but there's this scene towards the end with him and his father, and it just rang hollow to me. And it turns out, reading up about what was real in this movie and what wasn't, that never really took place in that capacity. And it makes sense, because in the movie I was like, that doesn't really track with what I'm feeling about these characters and everything else. And just the same, sort of, people were coming in and out of Bruce's life, and maybe if I was a hardcore fan, I would know a little bit more about who's who or whatever. But so many things were sort of left. I don't know if there were scenes on the cutting room floor or whatever, but as a viewer, it was a little confusing. And I'm glad that they decided not to overutilize the E Street Band, because they do show them briefly at the beginning of the movie. And the casting for that, they don't have any speaking roles. They're just like on stage. The casting for that was, for the most part, not good. Max Weinberg's double was okay. He's the drummer. Clarence Clemens looked like nothing like Clarence, the big man, they called him. So look, as a casual fan, I would say this is not one that you're going to want to immediately check out. However, I do think there may be an Oscar nomination in the future for White. I think he's assured a Golden Globe nomination, since they have twice the amount of nominations at the Globes. But that's the only reason to see this film. If you're a massive hardcore fan, okay, maybe you'll get something out of it more than I did. But I will recommend to you a movie about Springsteen's music that has really nothing to do with the boss himself, and that is Blinded by the Light. That came out a few years ago. Much better movie than this, and I think that was based on a true story as well. Much more interesting to me than Deliver Me from Nowhere. I leave it with a C. This happens a lot of times with biopics. A great performance in a very, very average movie. For a long time, Leo DiCaprio in J. Edgar was kind of my go-to for that. Fantastic performance, and he did get nominated for that, I do believe, but very, very average movie. I feel the same way about this one. All right, thanks for watching Dan Reviews It. I'll see you next time. Bye.